It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start off with President Biden's speech. My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. Over. Thank goodness. 20 years now over. And about time. Someone finally with the courage to go, you know what, we're getting out. And look, didn't have much of a choice, to be honest. The former guy put him in this position. The former guy put the whole country in this position, Mr. Art of the Bad Deal. As Biden said, the real choice was between leaving and escalating, between getting out or sending a lot more people in, because as he pointed out, the Taliban was stronger than they had been since 2001. And all of that falls back on the former guy who, look, said he was getting out. Now, I do give him credit for moving us in that direction. We should have been out years ago. But finally, Joe Biden got us out. And he said, look, you know, the bottom line is 90% of Americans of Afghanistan who wanted to leave were able to leave. And for those remaining, he said, there is no deadline. We remain committed to getting them out if they want to come out. Now, look, you know, like we talked about the other night, there are going to be people who want to stay. There are going to be people who work for NGOs. There are going to be people who work for all kinds of different entities or are married to people. Who knows what their reasons, what their rationales, what their thoughts are. They're going to voluntarily choose to stay. That's their choice. But here's the thing. We're out of it. Now, the right-wing rage machine was in overdrive today. You had Lauren Boebert, you had Madison Cawthorn, you had the whole traitor caucus calling for Biden to resign or they're going to impeach him. Not just him, not just Biden, but Vice President Harris and Secretary Blinken and Pelosi too. No, they're going to sweep everything. Understand, this is their election strategy in 2022. This is all they have because there's no policy there. There's no moving the country forward. There's nothing there other than rage, fear and smear, and more rage. Don't eat the outrage candy. Stop. Now, I do find it interesting, and I find it adorable. I do find it adorable that the rageaholic followers chimed right in of the traitor caucus and these right-wing grifters and snake oil salesmen. But it didn't just stop at, Joe Biden, what a mess. And it was Joe Biden hates dogs. And evidently I hate dogs too. So today I've been playing Chew Toy for the keyboard cowboys who they've got really nothing better to do but sit in their PJs and type away. Oh, so adorable. And look, I'm glad I gave them something to do today. Maybe a kernel of thought popped into their head. I did have fun playing with the rage and grievance crowd on Twitter because Twitter is one of those weird places where it's mob mentality. So when the main grifter says, go get him, they all come with their witty lines, their bad grammar, their typos, their misused words, the kind of stuff you'd expect from the rabid right wing of our political spectrum. But the thing that really just bizarre is the people pushing the, Biden left dogs in Afghanistan frame. They know what they're doing. They know the outrage candy. They know they can get these people all riled up and bunched up in the panties and fuming at the mouth so that they'll dig deep into their pockets and they'll donate. Because that's what the rage machine thrives on. Keeping people really amped up. Keeping them all twisted in the panties. And I got to be honest, they're good at it. They're good at feeding the flock the red meat. They most certainly are. They get lots of practice, and they're good at it. I give them credit. They are fantastic at it. But these people, I'll tell you, these are absolutely adorable. The ones that are real people. Now, understand, there were a bunch of people, and I spent a couple minutes reading through some of the comments, and they're all the same. Personal attacks, oh, you're this, you're that. Okay. You sat down and that's the best you could come up with? Is our education system failing you that badly that the best you could come up with is some nonsensical attack? And the answer is yes. But it's cute. It really is. Because I actually had the audacity to point out that no U.S. military dogs were left behind. For saying that, I am now a dog hater. Now, I did reach out to somebody who I trust, who is a military person, who assured me that no U.S. military dogs were left behind. His point was, we invest way too much money. They'll leave a broken down helicopter behind. They'll leave broken down, disabled equipment behind. But those dogs, their handlers would not leave them under no circumstances. So anyone who's going to try, and this is what this person told me, anyone who's going to try and tell you that a soldier was going to leave his or her dog behind doesn't understand the relationship between the soldier and the dog. And this was one of those things that was kind of the light bulb moment that made me go, this is all grift. This is all feeding the rage candy to the fuming class, because they need this. This is what they thrive on. They can't get through the day. And yet, you know who the real dog haters are? The former guy. The former guy hates not just dogs, but those losers and suckers in the military. Oddly enough, you didn't hear the rageaholics going on about that, because it's convenient to forget or to have never known. Ignorance is bliss, and it shows in the comments. And like I said, the video, they put out this video, and it's about 51 seconds of what is supposed to, I assume, be the Harman Karzai International Airport in Kabul. I'm supposed to believe that's what it is, and I can't say it is or it isn't. But there's 4 dogs that are walking through there, and the outrage machine is going, see, we left them behind. Nobody knows who those dogs belong to, or nobody knows who they are, but we do know that military contractors, we do know the military industrial complex, the profiteers, the mercenary class, they left them. They left them. And yet not one comment about the military industrial complex, not one comment about the grifters and the thieves. And I guess Eric Prince didn't have enough seats on his $6,500 jet that only had a few takers, I guess. There was plenty of room for Eric Prince and Glenn Beck to have brought the dogs with them, but they didn't, because they need the outrage. They need the anger. And the thing that gets me is these people, the ones that are real, because understand, most of the comments are from people who aren't real. Nobody sets up a Twitter account with George 64753897. Nobody does that, because you're never going to remember it. These are all fake accounts with fake comments, but it's made to make it look like, oh my gosh, the world's coming down and we're going to get you. And again, more feigned outrage, just like we saw with the birth of the Tea Party. This is the evil spawn of the Tea Party, and they know it. And the thing is I'm okay with them attacking me. I'm okay with it. But the sad thing is the people who are real, they're working people just like you and me. They're the people who have been lied to all these years. They're the people who need the Fox News. They need the OAN. They need the right-wing zealots and the grifters and the snake oil salesmen to get through their day and give them a sense of purpose. Because ultimately, they've got nothing left. And I sadly, I feel for them. Because here's the thing. And this is I couldn't help but think this all day today. As they're throwing out their comments and how much they love the dogs, and I'm like, fine, throw some money in, send a jet, bring them back. and we'll send them to your house. What's interesting is nobody said, hey, what about those Afghani children? Nobody said, hey, what about the women that we're leaving behind? Nobody said anything about that. Nobody said anything about vetting the dogs. Oh, no. Oh, no. We have to go get the puppies. Screw the kids. Screw the mothers and the grandparents and screw them. We're going to be out. We need outrage. And it's not even about the dogs. It's about the outrage. Now, here's the thing. I wish these folks would have had this level of outrage that they have at me today. I wish they'd have had that for the last 20 years. As the death tolls continued to climb, as the trillions of dollars were flowing out the door, and oh, by the way, our defense contractors were lining their pockets. In fact, I saw a story today that if you would have invested 10 grand in military industrial complex stocks at the beginning of this, that 10 grand would be 100 grand. 100 grand. So a lot of rich people got rich. And we know this. And if you don't, go and read Smedley Butler's War is a Racket, because it's the oldest racket. Get poor people to go off and die in a war that the rich people benefit from. And now we're watching the people who got us into this mess trying to frame the exit. The people who were responsible for getting us into this. The same lobbyists, the same talking heads, the same pundits, the same grifters, the same people who got us into this mess are the ones loading the gun and pointing it at each other, at each of us. So all these people who are, they think they're protecting the dog, all they're doing is they're being used. They're the useful idiots, the dupes. The Jay Gould, I could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. And all you have to do is say, Joe Biden left 4 dogs behind. And we're going to start a hashtag, and we're going to start a money campaign so that the grifters can line their pockets. And at no point did we talk about the fact that over the last 20 years, we've lost 2,350 soldiers. Another 21,000 people injured. Conservatively, the taxpayers spent over $45 billion a year. That's conservatively over $1 trillion over the entire span. I'm reading upwards of $3 trillion. Killed 31,000 civilians conservatively. Injured another nearly 30,000, conservative numbers. In 2012, and this is one of those little factoids that sticks in my head, we had more soldiers commit suicide than there were killed in combat. I don't hear anyone outraged about that. It's, oh, Joe Biden left a dog behind. Joe Biden hates puppies. I mean, it really is the lowest and simplest attack possible. They hate puppies. Never mind the soldiers who have chronic multi-symptom illnesses. Never mind those. Never mind the people with Gulf War syndrome. Never mind those people. We care about the puppies. But Rick, the puppies. And again, we don't know whose puppies those were, but I'll tell you, I'll guarantee you, after my conversation with my friend in the military, there's no way that there was a U.S. service dog left. And there are stories out there that outside of the New York Post who nobody believes. And all of the right-wing, and I'm not going to call them news sources, all the propaganda sources. This could have been an opportunity to pull our country together. To say, we're going to now come home. We're going to now heal. We're going to now take care of all the people who over the last 20 years that we've left to linger, that we've left to suffer, that we've left to go it alone. We're going to now commit to taking the money that we were spending over there, making Big Rock smaller, and we're going to take care of them. But you didn't hear that today. No. Because it's not about getting things done. It's not about progress. It's not about this country. It's about winning a Twitter. Oh, I got a Twitter comment. Oh. And it's adorable on a certain level. I mean, it's cute when you sit back and you realize it's all just ridiculous. And it's all political theater, and it's grift to make people think that, I can't say his name, pube sack is all I can come up with, that this guy somehow, he's their leader. Because he said they don't want you to see this 51-second video that has no source cited. I don't even know when it was taken. I'm supposed to trust that was even in Afghanistan? And the answer is no. Because it's not about fact. It's not about getting information out. It's not even about holding the administration accountable. It's about tearing things down. It's about destruction. And the same thing we're seeing on school boards across this country. This is the right-wing MO. If they can't control it, they're going to destroy it. It's what they do. It's what fascists do. And every one of these people who are, oh no, I have to question if they even know what they're fighting for. I would like to believe our education system was a little bit better and that critical thinking was a little bit better. Because my statement was very clear. There are no U.S. service dogs left behind. None. Now, what contractors do, what the likes of Halliburton and Kellogg Brown and Root and whomever else, it was Blackwater. Now I guess she's gone. They're running now flights. What these grifters do is they line their pockets. That's what they do really well. And the outrage machine, they get to keep us all knotted up and angry, so that we're willing to have an insurrection like we saw on January 6th. And we're willing to do that every week at school board meetings across this country because it's what they want. They want constant chaos. They want anarchy because they know the wealth class will make out. And ultimately, they will too. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1864. That was the day the final battle of the Atlanta campaign began with the Battle of Jonesboro. The Union had been embroiled in a civil war with Confederate forces to end the slave labor system for 3.5 years. It had been a difficult summer. Battles were increasingly bloody, with casualties on both sides numbering into the tens of thousands. Criticisms intensified against key Union generals like Sherman and Grant. Pressure mounted against President Lincoln to end the war and withdraw the Emancipation Proclamation if necessary. General William T. Sherman mounted the Atlanta campaign earlier that year in May. His forces scored a number of victories throughout the summer, but could not decisively defeat Confederate forces. By August, Northern morale was so low that the Republican National Committee deemed Lincoln unelectable. The Democratic National Convention, convening in Chicago, had declared the war a failure and planned to ride to victory over Lincoln in the November elections. But Lincoln's commitment to emancipation was unwavering, and Sherman did not disappoint. He understood that Atlanta was, as historian Eric Foner describes it, a key railroad hub and the communications and transportation center for the entire Southeast. Sherman's forces had been marching down from Chattanooga for most of the summer. Finally, they marched to the south of Atlanta to cut the last key rail line. And on this day, Union forces positioned themselves at the Flint River and at the Macon and Western Railroad. Over the next 2 days, they would successfully beat back multiple Confederate assaults, destroying the rail line and forcing Confederate forces to abandon Atlanta. the city was now fully under union occupation.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news. You may remember me railing on the other day about the school board in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and how they were literally taking food out of the mouths of children by not re-upping for the federal program to help them feed all the kids in the school. My school district has it. A lot of school districts have taken the federal money to make sure that they can feed kids. This one said, no, we're not going to do it because they'll get lazy. They'll get dependent. Finally, the outrage got to them and they changed their mind. Good thing. And this is where outrage is a good thing if used properly. Now, the craziness that we saw going on in the eastern part of the state in Pennsylvania, not good. When you got a guy who's saying, I'm literally going to go to a school board meeting with 20 guys and we're going to throw people out in the streets and install our people and get what we want. We can have an insurrection every day. Is that the goal? Here to share some thoughts on that is Lamont McClure. Lamont is the Northampton County Executive. The guy who said that is running against Lamont in this upcoming election. So I thought it'd be interesting to get his thoughts and his perspective. Lamont, thanks for taking time for us.
Good evening, Rick. Thank you so much for having me on your show tonight.
So I saw this video, and you can help me with this because I only saw a clip of it. I saw this guy, Steve Lynch, basically losing his mind, saying that he was going to die on the anti-mask hill and he was going to replace the school board and he's going to do all this stuff. And I'm going, that seems a bit threatening.
Well, Rick, as you know, I am the incumbent county executive of Northampton County. Unlike most of Pennsylvania's 67 counties, we have a home rule charter, and I am the independently elected executive. Steve Lynch, the individual you're referencing, is the Republican nominee to take me on in the fall. Yes, you heard it. The Republicans nominated an actual domestic terrorist. And let me prove the point. He participated in the attempted coup in D.C. on January 6th. His participation was so serious that he admitted that the FBI came to his door and he cowered in his basement while they were at the door to interview him about his insurrectionist activities on January 6th. So that's the context for who this guy is. And you can go to my YouTube page or go to lamontmcclure.com and see all about this insurrectionist. So when he threatened the school board with 20 strong men, and let's be clear, he said he was going to show up with 20 strong men and remove those people. He was going to give the school board an ultimatum. They leave or he was going to remove them. In my mind, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. Now, this guy is a QAnon conspiracy theorist. He shares all the QAnon conspiracy theories. He has called for the death, the execution of public officials on his Facebook page. This guy, he is not a legitimate candidate. He is a domestic terrorist who I believe should be investigated by the federal government for his insurrectionist activities.
No, but here's the thing, Lamont. In normal times, if I'm in your shoes, I want that kind of a kook. I want somebody who's wearing the tinfoil hat, hiding in his basement from the FBI. But sadly, we're in this post-Trump era where that seemed for some gets them excited and gets them motivated. And the outrage machine just keeps promoting and pushing them. Because look, after that comment, his numbers blew up. The crazy right, he's now their darling.
Well, but you hit it on the head. It is crazy. And we're fighting for democracy here. What he wants to get his hands on the election apparatus in Northampton County. And let me explain. Because, as I mentioned earlier, we're home rule. And because we're home rule, the elections division ultimately is the responsibility of the county executive. He and his right-wing zealots know that we are a bellwether county, not just in the Commonwealth, but across the nation. And if they can win Northampton County by hook or by crook, they can create a narrative that, for instance, how could Trump have possibly lost, which we know he did.
Right.
How he could have possibly lost Northampton County. We cannot let a known insurrectionist, a domestic terrorist, become county executive because they want to get their hands on the election apparatus.
No, absolutely. And this is where these are people who do not believe in democracy. These are fascists. These are people who elections are only to confirm what they already believe. And if they don't get what the results they want, they're going to do what they saw on January 6th and what he had said he was going to do, to the school boards over a mask. And this is the part that gets me, Lamont. We're talking about simply a cloth over someone's face to help protect them and others. Somehow for him, that's the hill that he is willing to die on. I'm sorry, I'm missing the point here.
Yeah, so it's entirely ideological, right? It's not about science or health for them. It's not about their freedom. It's all about politics. They've staked out this extreme position. And look, people who are unvaccinated are dying. They are dying. We need to get folks vaccinated. Vaccinations save lives and livelihoods. We need to protect each other by wearing our masks and staying distant when we can. I mean, these are common sense, science-based, data-based solutions to real problems. And guys like this don't care about people dying. They want an ideological niche so that they can seize power. And we really have to prevent that. And people can help me preventing that by going to lamontmcclure.com and donating. I have an Act Blue page. You can donate through PayPal, or you can send me an old-fashioned check through the snail mail. I mean, I know you didn't have me on here to
look, this is part of the game. You got to raise money to because these folks, they're raising tons of money. The outrage machine is a money-making machine. This is what they do. So we've got to help folks like you move in their direction to get good, decent, honest people into these positions, because this guy has already told us what he believes in. He doesn't believe in democracy. He doesn't believe in the rule of law. And he sure as heck doesn't believe in keeping people safe, because it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that event took place at Lehigh Valley, the hospital campus there, right?
No, I mean, he's had several rallies outside of hospital facilities throughout the county where he's calling for anti-vaccination policies. He's calling for anti-mask policies. Look, for some reason, for this guy, for Lynch, freedom equals death. I don't understand it. I don't. I don't understand what the psychology is from where a person like that comes from. I believe in life. I want to be vaccinated. I want you to be vaccinated. Vaccinations save lives and livelihoods. These masks are going to keep little kids from getting sick. But for some reason, for Lynch, freedom equals death, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, ultimately, and I know a bunch of people like Lynch, that freedom means freedom for them, and, well, the hell with you and me. And whatever they want is the rule, and, well, democracy be damned. So as you're talking to people, because obviously this is an important campaign now, what are people saying about this? I mean, do you see him gaining traction in the Lehigh Valley? Do you see him getting any support really? I mean, I lived there for about 10 years. It wasn't crazy then. Has it gone crazy?
It's still not crazy. The Lehigh Valley is a wonderful place to live and work and raise your children, and to hope your children stay, they don't leave. I mean, economically, we're doing great. We're the third largest region in the state. We're the third largest economic region. We're really pressing Allegheny County and Southwest PA to be the second largest. We're really close. Things are great here. We have tremendous universities, Moravian College, Lehigh, Lafayette. We're just doing really great here. And it's a great place to work. Our populations are growing. We're thriving, but we do have a small minority of people like Lynch. And I think Lynch is sort of the worst of them. I can't understand what the Republican Party was thinking, not even putting up a candidate against him. Because when you get one of our two major parties' nominations, that does give you a little bit of an imprimatur of someone who should actually be in the race. But this guy's not a legitimate candidate. He is not fit to serve. And so we're very concerned about that. Lehigh Valley, great place to live and work. We're going to beat this guy, but I need your listeners to go to LamontMcClure.com. We've got ActBlue, PayPal. Send us some money to help us defeat this guy because he truly is dangerous. He was at the insurrection. He participated in the attempted coup. The FBI came to interview him about it. He's threatened school boards with violence. He is called for the murder of elected officials on Facebook. He spreads QAnon conspiracy. This is a very dangerous man, and we must stop him and people like him right now.
No, I'm right there with you. But here's the weird thing. The death cult, formerly known as the GOP, their only goal is restraining and destroying government, tearing things down so that private interests can control things. At least that's my view on it. You don't have to agree. I'm looking at his website. I don't see a platform other than what is the ideological death cult platform of freedom and liberty. And they don't even define what they believe those are. So when you're talking to people, is issue now important? Does it matter what you believe and how you're going to do your job? Because, I was checking out the work you've done. You've done some really good work as county commissioner. Does that even matter anymore?
No, it does matter. Like I said, the folks in Northampton County and the Lehigh Valley at large, they're good people, right? We've got great people here, including a lot of Republicans. A lot of Republicans are excellent folks, great folks, hardworking folks. Not going to hear me say a bad thing about Northampton County regular old Republican voter folks. They're good people too. But the bottom line is I haven't raised their taxes in 3 years. I'm not going to raise them this year. We might even be able to cut them. They like that. That's something they're talking about. You ask me what they're talking about. They're talking about the fact that I don't raise their taxes. They're talking about the fact that our administration has handled the coronavirus pandemic as well as they think could possibly be handled. We've done everything we could to crush the virus. We partnered with local hospitals to create testing sites. We've partnered with local hospitals to create vaccination sites. We have obtained as much or more PPE for first responders and frontline workers than just about any county in the Commonwealth. We have saved, by throwing a lifeline to over 1,000 small businesses, almost $25 million in grants to help them survive the COVID-19 pandemic and then help them thrive when we get on the other end of it. So these are just some of the things we've done over the 4 years, and people are talking about them. And they do appreciate them. And it is a message that's resonating. But I also have to address the fact that Lynch is a domestic terrorist. I am running against a legitimate domestic terrorist. And don't let it fool you that he has the imprimatur of our other major party. This guy is not fit. He is not qualified. And we need to make sure that he is not elected because he's going to get a hold of that elections apparatus. And you don't want him to be in charge of that elections apparatus when the 2022 and 2024 elections come around because you don't know what he's capable of. A guy who'll go and start an attempted coup on January 6th, a guy who'll threaten to forcibly remove school directors, a guy who'll call for the murder of elected officials on Facebook. He's capable of anything when he's in charge of the election, and we must stop him. So go to LamontMcClure.com and make a donation, please.
I hope folks will go there, LamontMcClure.com. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at this. So, I just want to be crystal clear in this because, there are people who say there isn't a big difference between Democrats and Republicans. This is one of those races where there couldn't be clearer differences. One person who seems to want to tear down the rule of law and democracy and overturn elections and do all that. And also, I would argue if he's in charge, the Lehigh Valley, Northampton County could be a COVID hotspot at some point, just at a time where we can't afford to have that happen.
Well, look, for Lynch, freedom equals death, and I don't understand it. But what I can tell you is you referenced elections. We put on fair, legal, and accurate elections in Northampton County, and we're very sensitive to the fact that we're a bellwether, not just for PA, but for the whole country. And we're only an hour and a half ride from the media capital of the world, New York City. So they pay attention to what this bellwether does, maybe even more than the bellwether that Erie is. So we're very sensitive that we have to get elections right. And as a matter of fact, we were the first to report in the Commonwealth our results in 2020. That was very important for us, not only to be fast, but accurate and efficient. And we put on legal, fair, and accurate elections. And as Steve Lynch has the apparatus of elections in Northampton County, they will not be fair, legal, and accurate. And that could have very dire consequences in 22 and especially 2024. Let me give you one example. Drop boxes. He won't have drop boxes. I had drop boxes. I had one in each of our county council districts. There were over 10,000 votes cast in those drop boxes. Joe Biden only won Northampton County by about 2,000 votes. There won't be drop boxes in 2024, Steve. And that's just one lawful way that he could interfere with people's right to vote. Imagine all the unlawful things Steve Lynch would get up to. And I'm not casting aspersions. This was a guy who participated in the attempted coup. This is a guy who goes on Facebook and spreads QAnon conspiracy theories. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look at his Facebook page. It's insane. And we must defeat him. We must.
No, I've seen who he is, and I pair him in the same category as someone like Doug Mastriano. So as I'm looking at the state level, to have a county executive and the state senators that we've got wanting to do the same kind of Arizona-esque recounts here and all the shenanigans that we've seen across the country, it's dangerous to have people like this in elected office. And I keep coming back to, we got to vote for good people. We need good people to run for election, and we need voters who are going to be cognizant of the fact that we've got a traitor caucus now who wants to tear down our country. So last 30 seconds, this is usually where I go, give me the 30-second elevator pitch, but don't vote for the terrorist is probably the best bumper sticker you could get.
Yeah, no, look, my opponent is a domestic terrorist, and that's what's on the line here. We must defeat him. We must keep his hands off the election apparatus. I would love to be sitting here. I know you're a labor guy. I would love to be sitting here talking to you about my recent labor council endorsement, about all the support I have from the building trades, all the support I have from AFSCME. I would love to be able to talk to you about all that, all the firefighter support that I have. I have a tremendous amount of labor support. I can't talk to you about any of that because I'm running against an actual traitor to our country.
Yeah. LamontMcClure.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. Lamont, thanks for coming on. I appreciate the time, and I hope you'll come back again and talk to us real soon.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. LamontMcClure.com. Go make a donation. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day the Battle of Blair Mountain raged in Logan County, West Virginia. Members of the United Mine Workers of America were attempting to organize the minefields in the southern part of the state. The efforts to bring workers to union was met with violent resistance. The miners armed themselves and marched south. As many as 10,000 miners joined the march. They met armed company men at Blair Mountain. In the battle that ensued, 1 million rounds were fired. The mine owners even hired private planes to drop bombs on Union miners. The U.S. Army intervened and the battle ended. Despite not being successful in their march, the bloody battle brought national attention to the violence in the coal fields. But that was not the last battle for Blair Mountain. In 2011, there was a proposal to bring mountaintop removal mining to Blair Mountain. This type of mining blasts off large chunks of a mountain surface to get at the coal seams below. Protesters stood against the proposal. They argued it would be environmentally devastating to the area. They also argued that it would blast away one of the most important sites of labor history in the nation. Some coal miners took exception to the protests.
In a CNN documentary on the conflict, one union miner said, quote, "Mountaintop removal is what built this house, sends that little girl to school, provides insurance for my wife." But another miner joined in the protest against removal. He told CNN that miners had been, quote, "brainwashed to think, oh, I can't have a job unless it's a mountaintop removal job." In 2014, the state prohibited surface mining at Blair Mountain. For now, but that is subject to change. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, tragedy in Mississippi. 2 people were killed and 10 others injured as a giant crater opened up, 50 to 60 feet wide, 20 to 30 feet deep. You had 7 cars and a motorcycle. Ground just opened up because of Hurricane Ida. Highway 26 West shut down traffic, well, completely, because you now have a giant sinkhole crater that swallowed all this stuff up. And look, the hurricane, this is the hurricane, but it's also the fact that our infrastructure hasn't been rebuilt in decades and isn't prepared for the climate change and the storms that are coming. Even in a place like Mississippi, where they get hurricanes regularly, it's gonna get worse, which is why we need major investment. That's why I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's good to be with you as always.
So I'm looking at this giant hole, and the pictures are, oh my gosh, just, I can't even imagine. They had to get a crane to pull people out of this giant sinkhole. And it's because we haven't invested in our infrastructure, and we haven't done the things that we need to do to prepare us for what's coming.
Yeah, you're right about that. And obviously you're right to point to the hurricane as the precipitating event. But like with a lot of things, there's a backstory to this as well. And that backstory is 2 or 3-fold. Number one, our infrastructure is old. Bridges in particular, we have tens of thousands of bridges that are deficient because they were built to last for a set amount of time, and we're well beyond that time span. Number two, the construction that was done wasn't done with resiliency in mind, the ability to withstand major events like this. I mean, I know there are some localities, some states that have stricter codes for things like this because they're either in earthquake zones or more recently, in the face of hurricanes. But by and large, that hasn't been a factor when constructing in the past. And then the third factor is obviously the fact that even though people talk about this all the time, Washington has done not much to move the needle forward on any of these issues until very recently. And, I remain hopeful. Be interested to see how you feel about infrastructure as well. But I'm optimistic that we can get something across the finish line before October the 1st that will allow a rebuilding of bridges, roads, other infrastructure, and to do it in a way where, unfortunately, we have to face reality, which is we're going to have more major events like this, and we need an infrastructure that's going to be resilient and able to withstand all of that as well.
No, absolutely, and it's something we need to be doing now. And I look at the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that I don't think is sufficient. I think we need much more. In fact, the Society for Civil Engineers has come out and said we need $4.6 trillion in hard infrastructure stuff, and we need it now. And I don't think the $3.5 trillion plan is enough because we've neglected our infrastructure and our human infrastructure for decades. So this is just kind of a small catch up. I mean, the numbers are staggering, but it's a small catch up for years of neglect.
Yeah, this is a down payment. I mean, it gets us from failing grades or C minuses up to something that is a little more acceptable, but that is not great. And I think this is the thing. I'm an American exceptionalist in some ways, in other ways, definitely not. But in some ways I am, where we should be leading the world in this. We should be showing the way how this is done. But when you look all around you with the physical infrastructure, most of the great examples of the 21st century are not in the United States. And we're instead playing catch up. So You're right. This infrastructure bill is kind of a down payment. And everybody, in a couple of years will say, well, those guys just got their hands on a bunch of money. And Rick, you're absolutely right. It's not enough. I mean, that was like the first installment. But we do have a long, not only on roads and bridges, on other forms of physical infrastructure, as you mentioned, like school buildings, waterworks, broadband, and the list goes on, in addition to ensuring that we have the social infrastructure in place so that people don't get whipsawed during catastrophic events or economic downturns as well.
No, absolutely. But here's the thing, and this is the thing that's concerning to me, is we're looking at all the shortages that we have in our supply chain. You look at all of the things that they're telling us we don't manufacture or can't manufacture, and I go, we're in this moment where we need massive investment. We need tons of steel and cement and you name it. We need stuff to build stuff, and yet we don't have the manufacturing capacity at this moment to do it. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe we can't build it, but at this moment we don't have it.
Right. Yeah, there's shortages not only of semiconductors, but of a lot of critical materials and other sorts of goods as well. And there are again two fundamental reasons for that. One is that we've been in this crazy time, obviously. The second is that we lost a lot of that capacity. And when you're not making the stuff, you're not first in line. I mean, the home country, the home region, they're going to take care of themselves. And this is exactly what the government in Beijing has done with all the multinational companies that located there. It's like, wait. You're going to take care of us first, and then you can help the rest of the world. So if, for instance, the majority of the world's semiconductors are made in China, or 70% of the lithium-ion batteries, that definitely creates a leverage problem. And I think this administration understands that, and they understand that in a way that has an urgency to it, is that we do have to build up this capacity in a hurry in the United States, so that we are not so that we're not at a point where we're over leveraged, so that we can mitigate some of this political risk, but also so that we can have a smooth running economy and supply chain for complex things like automobiles, which we do. We build great automobiles when we have the parts. So if we make more of those parts in America, we're not going to have the same challenge.
No, I'll tell you, I wish we made more auto parts in the U.S. because the ones that we get from China are junk. I've got a friend who's a mechanic. He says, half the parts I pull out of the box are no good out of the box, let alone you put them in and you go through 5 starters to get one that works. I'd like us to have some quality control and some pride in the work that gets done. It's just we're in this weird spot that we've allowed corporate America to go chase the cheapest labor, the most exploitable environmental conditions, and what it's done is it's created this: the consumer's screwed, working people are screwed, the country's screwed, and now we got to dig out of this huge mess. And what's coming out of Washington, I still don't believe is enough. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, we have you want to spend all this money?" Yeah, because we need to. We need to invest.
Yeah. And even then, Rick, it's still billions versus trillions, and the trillions being the money that the Chinese Communist Party and the government of Beijing puts up to prop up its own industries. Not only does it prop up its own industry through subsidies, it owns a bunch of them too. So we're approaching nothing close to that. But if I'm confident that we don't need all of that money that China deploys, because I think we can do it more efficiently. But we do need a big boost, because otherwise, again, we make something like 11 or 12% of the world's semiconductors right now. We make 1% of the world's solar panels right now. We make 7% of the lithium-ion batteries in the world right now. And that is just not, that's completely inadequate, particularly when we want to grow those sectors of the economy. So it does take a plan. I mean, these companies, if they were going to have an act of altruism where they said, you know what, we're suddenly patriots, we're going to bring this stuff back to the United States, they would have done that a long time ago. No, it takes incentives, it takes policy, and it also takes a market. Biden wants to build the market. You got to provide the right incentives, and you need the policy, like procurement, like buying American, to go along with that. And we need to lean in on that. And to me, this isn't a partisan issue. This is about making economically and from a national security point of view as well. So we ought to be able to get Democrats and Republicans behind policies like
on
that.
the national security front. I mean, our cyber infrastructure is so far behind and lacking. Our broadband access is pathetic, and I'm not thrilled with what they've done on that front in the infrastructure bill by just handing money over to corporate America and ensuring that my local community can't build out things that they need. There's so much that we should be doing that sadly lobbyists and the moneyed interests have figured out how to play this game. And this is where, I'm hoping at some point we, as the working class of this country, wake up to the reality that we're divided at every opportunity, and that where we need to unite is on this stuff, because this is about national security. This is about the future of the country. And you go back to what happened today in Mississippi. You got roads that just are going to open up. I mean, is this going to be one of those moments where every day we're going to be worrying about which roads are opening up or bridges are collapsing or which tragedy's next because our infrastructure is failing us?
Yeah. Well, yes. And I think for the average citizen who may not think about semiconductors the way that auto executives do or others, certainly is going to be concerned about getting around town safely and having the ability to do that.
Right, especially if we're going to all EVs. I mean, if eventually we're going to go to electric vehicles.
Right.
I had a caller, recently go, hey, we can't go to electric vehicles because we're hyper dependent on China for all of these chips and this wirings and all this stuff. We don't make any of this stuff. So what are we doing? Are we trading Middle East oil for Chinese electronics? We're still no better off. And I don't know that I disagree with them.
Right. Well, they're right about that, which is why for a long time we have been advocating for Buy America provisions for the federal spending. If you want a charging infrastructure and you want the federal government to pay for some of it, it's got to be made in America. Like, I think that's our point of view. Same with broadband. You want to build out broadband in your community, that fiber optic cable needs to be coming from the United States of America. And guess what? There are steelworkers in North Carolina who work for Corning who make this. So this is about well-paying jobs as well. And so you need that policy. You're right. If you just, if you're like California and you're just going to mandate electric vehicles, you don't care where they come from, you're going to give China a leg up because they are so far ahead in building out the supply chain. And unfortunately, they provide these massive subsidies to their companies that you need a procurement policy as well. It's like, yeah, consumers, we're going to give you an incentive if your electric car is made in the United States of America. And I think that's a really, really smart way to go. That's the way we're going to get back into the game.
Yep. No, and on every manufacturing front, but on the climate especially, because there's such an opportunity here to remake our economy in a way where people get good paying union jobs, where we're not trading for poverty wage jobs, that there's an opportunity for people to get ahead. But that we do make it here because we've got to address climate change. Something has to happen. I don't know if you saw it today, but California evidently has closed all of their parks.
Right.
All of the national parks are closed because they're going too many fires. We just can't deal with it.
Yeah. So on the clean energy front, and we talked about electric vehicles and the catch up we have to do. The catch up we have to do there. One thing that gives me some hope is that the big automakers in the United States have committed to EVs in the future, and we're going to make darn sure that they're manufactured in the United States. we're playing catch up on solar. 1% of the world's solar panels are made in the United States. We need to boost that up, and with wind power generation as well. And for a long time, people have probably been seeing those big wind turbines go up either offshore or in some parts of the country. I know they're in western Pennsylvania. You can see them. I was driving through the state of Indiana a couple weeks ago. There's miles and miles of them. Not a single one of those is made in the United States. And so you have to have a policy that says we're going to manufacture these in the United States. And guess what? It works. Just within the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen some big announcement. Sparrows Point, which well in Baltimore, home of Bethlehem Steel. They're going to be fabricating steel for offshore wind turbines there, creating hundreds of jobs. A major wind farm deployer just announced that they'll be manufacturing a substation to bring that, because you have to have a way to get that power to shore. They're going to be manufacturing the first one of those in the United States. So we're slowly but surely making progress. And Rick, to me, this is proof that if you have the policy, if you want to have the demand there, you're saying this power has to be clean, or these vehicles have to be electric. You also need the manufacturing policy to go along with it, the incentives for the manufacturers, and then also the rules that say these have to be made in the United States of America.
No, and this is where I think Joe Biden has done a really good job, and I'm thrilled that they're pushing in the right direction. Are there some things that I'm not thrilled with in that bipartisan bill? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but that's what you get. It's what you get with bipartisanship.
Right. Yeah, it's. If you would have wrote the bill, if I would have wrote the bill, we do it completely different. I don't want to make the perfect be the obstacle of getting something done. And it's not even like we'll have to hold our noses on this, because there's a lot of good stuff. There just isn't enough.
Right.
There's a few stinkers in there, but nothing that is completely and totally outrageous like the trade-offs that Clinton and Gingrich made back in the 90s. There's nothing that approaches that. So let's get this over the finish line. Both of these important pieces of legislation, the physical infrastructure, and then the investments in our future, in our people, and in our clean energy, and in our manufacturing as well.
I'm right there with you, Scott. I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. Keep up the great work that you guys do there at the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Thanks so much.
All right, Rick. Take care. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work yourself. Appreciate it.
You too, brother. Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Make sure you check out their website, americanmanufacturing.org. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. 3,500 buses rolled into Washington, D.C. They were loaded with protesters, there to participate in Solidarity Day. The AFL-CIO organized the event to coincide with the Labor Day weekend. They issued a statement, "Why We March," outlining labor's demands. The purpose of the day was to bring attention to the concerns of the nation's working people, especially over health care. Other reasons for the march included a call for more public works programs. Another major demand was the end to permanent replacement of striking workers by scabs. Bernie Dinkin, Secretary-Treasurer of the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union in Philadelphia, explained, "One of the main purposes for us going down is to let our friends know, our friends in the Democratic Party who are sitting on their laurels, that if they do not support anti-scab legislation, we will vote against them, no matter what they've done in the past." The most important aim of the event was to show worker strength and solidarity. A similar showing of solidarity had taken place in the nation's capital 10 years before. After President Reagan fired striking air traffic controllers, a September 1981 rally had drawn more than 250,000 people. people. The 1991 action brought out similar numbers. Despite the 95-degree weather, tens of thousands converged on the nation's capital. They came from across the nation and 30 countries. 100 buses and a specially chartered train made the trip from Philadelphia. Noticeable among the crowd were members of the United Steelworkers Union with their gold and blue shirts. 180 different labor, religious, and civil rights groups stood up on that day for the rights of working people.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
As a writer, I get stuck every so often straining for the right words to tell my story. Over the years, though, I've learned when to quit tying myself into mental knots over sentence construction, instead stepping back and rethinking where my story is going. This process is essentially what millions of American working families are going through this year, as record numbers of them are shocking bosses, politicians, and economists by stepping back and declaring, "We quit." Most of the quits are tied to very real abuses that have become ingrained in our workplaces over the past couple of decades. Poverty paychecks, no health care, unpredictable schedules, no child care, understaffing, forced overtime, unsafe jobs, sexist and racist managers, tolerance of aggressively rude customers, and so awful much more. Specific grievances abound, but at the core of each is a deep, inherently destructive executive suite malignancy, disrespect. The corporate system has cheapened employees from valuable human assets worthy of being nurtured and advanced to a bookkeeping expense that must be steadily eliminated. It's not just about paychecks. It's about feeling valued, feeling that the hierarchy gives a damn about the people doing the work. Yet, corporate America is going out of its way to show that it doesn't care. And of course, workers notice. So unionization is booming. Millions who were laid off by the pandemic are refusing to rush back to the same old grind, and now millions who have jobs are quitting. This is much more than an unusual unemployment stat. It's a sea change in people's attitude about work itself and life. This is Jim Hightower saying people are rethinking where their story is going and how they can take it in a better direction. Yes, nearly everyone will eventually return to work, but workers themselves have begun redefining the job and rebalancing it with life. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the nurses at St. Vincent's Hospital in Massachusetts filed an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board against their owner, Dallas-based Tenet Healthcare. This is the longest strike in Massachusetts, the longest nursing strike in Massachusetts history. I think they went out sometime early in March. And the thing that gets me is, and I say this all the time about these kind of strikes, you get these companies who will spend untold fortunes just to deny the simple things that working people need, like a decent wage, decent health care, a little bit of retirement security, better working conditions. They will spend untold fortunes. And as I understand at this point, they've spent in excess of $100 million. And I got to question you, if they spent that $100 million on better wages, hours, conditions for the nurses that they had, that made them one of the top 10 best hospitals in the state, do you think they could have even gone higher and better? But this is about control and power. And ultimately, in my view, it's always about breaking the union. But here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Massachusetts' longest nursing strike, I've asked Marlena Pellegrino to come talk with us. Marlena is a 35-year nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital. She's also on the negotiating committee there. Marlena, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So am I getting this right? This Tenet Healthcare from Dallas? From Dallas. I don't know why a Dallas company's owning a hospital in Massachusetts, but that's another argument. Right. That they've spent $100 million on this so far?
Absolutely. I think it's in excess of $100 million. We went on strike on March 8th for safe patient care, actually advocating for our patients. nothing to do with wages. Really trying to work with this company for over 2.5 years before we went on strike, doing everything we could to avoid this. But in the end, they dismissed our concerns, and we had to take that step that we didn't want to, last resort. And we've been out on the sidewalk for 177 days, standing up for our patients.
So, this is the thing that gets me. I mean, you guys, the nurses, the people who work in hospitals, the people who last year were calling frontline heroes and essential, and we were applauding in public. Granted, I don't know that they gave you any raises or even a pat on the back as an atta girl, but
No.
I'm looking at this going, is this how we treat our heroes?
Yeah, well, apparently this is how Tenet Healthcare Corporation. This is their unfortunately a for-profit, multi-billion-dollar company. They really have no roots in our community. We're a community hospital, and they have come in and basically they've stripped every bit of the identity of St. Vincent Hospital, a very over 125-year-old Catholic-based hospital. They've tried to strip us of our identity, of our ability to actually advocate for our patients. And as soon as a certain administrative group came in over the last 2.5 years, a certain CEO, we could see the changes right away. There was undermining of our union rights immediately. There was anything that we did that she did not agree with was seen as something that needed to be very punitive. It's been a very toxic work environment, and at this time, they have been undermining our strike as we have been on strike. Before we went on strike, as we have been on strike, and up until this date, they are undermining our ability to maintain our strike by intimidating our nurses, by coercing them, by retaliating against us for illegally going out on strike. It's very distressing at this time, and we could have had an agreement about 2 weeks ago. We met after a very long strike, and we could have come to an agreement on the prime issue we're fighting for is safer patient care, more registered nurses at the bedside. It basically comes down to if they put a few more nurses on every shift, we would not be on strike, and they would not be spending this money. But it's really about ego and power and control for them. So at this time, they're denying us our right to go back to work to our same exact jobs. And we've not been able to settle the strike because of their unlawful behavior.
So,
really,
in looking at this, the question I always ask, because, if it's not about money, it's not about wages, it's not about benefits, it's not about those things. It's really about making the hospital a better place by giving better care to patients, something I would think a hospital would want. Then is it about breaking the union? Is it about, just getting the union out so that they have dictatorial control and to hire and fire and discipline and do whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want?
Yeah, 100%. We felt that 100%. Before we went out, those threats were made. It was made known that they want our union, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, they want them out of the hospital. They don't want us to have a legalized voice in any way. And they've made that very clear with every action they've taken, that the larger issue, the larger agenda, there's a very sinister agenda here, is that they do not want us to have a union in that hospital. And I believe that they are trying to make an example of us. They own about 67 or 68 hospitals across this country, hundreds of surgical centers across this country, many not in the Northeast where I live. And they definitely are trying to set an example for their other facilities by trying to break our union in our hospital, which will set a precedent for them across all of their hospitals. It's very, very dangerous, and it's not only dangerous for workers like nurses, but it is very, very dangerous for patients. Patients, obviously, if you're in the hospital, you're very vulnerable. You're at a time in your life where you need extra care. You need someone to be at your bedside. You need someone to meet your needs. And it's not a CEO or an administrator that comes into your hospital room 24 hours a day providing comfort or pain medication or education. And it's very, very sad that they call themselves a healthcare corporation, and they would actually put their own self-interest, their own ego need for power and control over the safety of our patients are suffering in Worcester. In our Worcester community, this hospital has closed beds, done everything they can to keep us out of the hospital while our patients are going without care, and they're receiving very poor care from the nurses that they've flown in from all over the country. And it's just, it's mind-boggling to caregivers like myself and the 700 nurses I work with. We can't even wrap our head around that kind of lack of compassion. We just think, what is wrong with these people's souls? Actually, we're confounded, but we stand strong. I mean, you have to. I mean, patients' lives are on the line.
No, and good on you. I've been following this for some time, and look, one day longer. But I'm looking at this and going, these corporations have no soul. They're not people. No matter what Mitt Romney says, it's all about the bottom line, and they're proving it. And look, the scab nurses that they bring across your picket line, they're not the best and brightest. If they were, they would be on somewhere, taking care of patients there. But what do you say to the people, Marlena, who go, if you care about the patients that much, why go on strike? Isn't there a better way?
I wish there was a better way. And if anyone knows nurses, you know that a nurse's strike is very, very unusual. And to have nurses on strike for 6 months, you have to question the leadership of the hospital that would allow their nurses to get to that point where they are so despondent. Every shift we were so despondent that we felt that we had no choice. We were forced out the door. We for 2.5 years, we tried every measure that we could, meeting with management, every unsafe staffing report. We took a no confidence vote in the CEO. We signed petitions, hundreds and hundreds of us. We wore buttons. We had informational tickets. We had standouts. We had staffing symposiums. We had negotiations. Not one thing worked. They basically disregarded every concern that their professional registered nurses have. It's really a slap into the face to our profession as well. I mean, we hold a license to practice nursing. If we're telling the administration, who do not hold medical degrees, that it's unsafe to care for this number of patients or this acuity of patients, we're telling the truth. I mean, our job is to care for patients. So at a certain point, you reach the point that if you're leaving every day, your license is in jeopardy, your patients are unsafe, and the hospital will not listen to you, you take that larger step if you have to, and you take it outside to the street to let the community know this is what's going on, in the hopes that in the end it makes it better for everyone. If you sweep these things under the rug, as these corporations do, if you let them beat you into submission, if you sell your soul to the devil, which is what we say, I mean, it's just straight up what we say, then you are complicit in their behavior. And at some point you do, the group of nurses I work with, we felt we needed to take this on. It's not something we wanted to do, and it's not something that you do lightly. Like I said, it was in the making for close to 2 years. So, it's something that these corporations force workers to do, and it's very sad. It can be avoided if they actually cared about their patients and cared about the safety of their patients.
Yeah, if they just sat down and bargained in good faith. And from what I've been seeing, I don't see the good faith because I don't know anybody who wants to go on strike. It's the absolute last arrow in the quiver, and it sounds like you guys were pushed to the extremes. And look, you're right. At some point, you've got to take the last stand and say, we've done all we can do. Because look, I've been in the hospital a couple of times. I've been very fortunate. Haven't ever really, really been sick. But the handful of times that I've spent a night in the hospital, the nurses have always been fabulous. They've always been the people who've, told me what to expect. They've always been there to have a comforting word, to educate, to do all the things you said. I can't imagine them being stressed to the point of the stories that I'm hearing now, and not being able to do their job, and just exhausted and worn out. Because my fear is these corporations keep pushing you. Eventually, all the good people leave, and all we're left with are the scab nurses who are willing to cross your picket line.
Right. Yeah, and that's something we don't want. That nurses have. We're not a stranger to hard work or challenges, and when you I think there obviously there's nursing is a female-dominated profession, and I believe that is we have wonderful male nurses, and we have lots of them. But to be frank, it is still a female-dominated profession, and I think corporations like this, they take that as a sign of weakness. They don't realize how strong nurses are, and if you back us into a corner and our patients' lives are at risk, we are going to take that stand and stand up for our patients. There's nothing worse than having an assignment of patients that where you're choosing which patient you're going to give care to and which patient you're not going to get to. When a hospital corporation administration puts you in that position, that's a very bad position to be in. It's not something that a professional registered nurse wants to do, and they'll do anything to stand up and advocate for what their patients need. We were talking about patient safety. I've been a nurse a long time, as you said, 35 years, and I celebrated my 35th year anniversary on the picket line, advocating for patients on the street and not at the bedside, which I would prefer to do. We miss nursing our patients, but when you push nurses to that point, they will stand up and do the right thing. And in the last 3 months that I worked before we went out on strike, I saw more patients fall in those 3 to 4 months than I have in 35 years. That's a problem. That's a problem that lack of staffing, lack of resources, and when this hospital during COVID, they furloughed nurses, they sent nurses home, they made sure we had the minimum amount of staff while they made money off of a pandemic. That is something that cannot be tolerated.
That's disgraceful.
That's just evil.
That's
it's just
disgraceful.
Plain old evil.
So two quick questions. One, the community support is ultimately one of the most important things you can get. What kind of response are you getting from folks in the community? Because look, you're part of the community. What kind of responses are you getting from folks?
The Worcester community is we are humbled by the support we have received for the 6 months we've been on strike, and in the months before that. We have been, Worcester is, it's a very labor-friendly town. We're a very, a blue-collar city. Our patients are our friends. They're our neighbors. They're our family members. They know us by name. We're a community hospital, and they have been solely behind us, really the entire way. We're out on the picket line till midnight every, 18 hours a day for 6 months straight. The beeps, the waves, the people stopping by our strike office to offer support, offer donations, bring us food and coffee on the line, have cookouts for us. And it's just, they stop on the way, even out of the hospital, patients stop and say, keep going, you're doing the right thing, you're supporting us. It's really been an unbelievable experience, something you don't want to have to do, but you can see that the community understands that the nurses are the ones that care for them, and we're doing this for our patients, though it's very hard to do. So they've been really amazing.
I give you credit. Keep up the great fight. How can we help?
Well, you can get the word out that St. Vincent Hospital nurses are still on strike, and that Tenet Healthcare Corporation is conducting some unlawful anti-union strike-busting tactics, and that people stay tuned. And, we do have a website. There are donations to the St. Vincent Hospital Nurses Strike Fund. Obviously, it's a lot of months on strike. And, just be on the lookout for the truth. Nurses are telling the truth. And just, keep up the fight for fighting for unionized workers, and know that we're doing what we can to care for our patients. So, we just want people to be aware of what this corporation is capable of, what they're trying to do to us, and to help that not happen.
Do you have a strike fund? Do you guys have any strike funds or anything that folks can donate to?
Yes, we do. We have a strike fund. We have a website, St. Vincent Hospital Nurses Strike Fund, that you can donate to.
All right, we'll get a link out to hopefully folks will donate a couple of bucks to help you guys out, because I know these are trying times for folks. Stay the course one day longer. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
I hope you'll come back and
Yes,
share
sure.
some thoughts as this continues, and hopefully it's short and hopefully you win.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good, thanks. Thanks so much, Marlena Pellegrino. Look, this is, as she said, this isn't something people want. This isn't that you wake up and go, oh, I think we're going to go on strike today. No, they were pushed into this by a corporation who clearly wanted to take their union from them. And good on them for standing up to the fight. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1864. That was the day the final battle of the Atlanta campaign began with the Battle of Jonesboro. The Union had been embroiled in a civil war with Confederate forces to end the slave labor system for 3.5 years. It had been a difficult summer. Battles were increasingly bloody, with casualties on both sides numbering into the tens of thousands. Criticisms intensified against key Union generals like Sherman and Grant. Pressure mounted against President Lincoln to end the war and withdraw the Emancipation Proclamation if necessary. General William T. Sherman mounted the Atlanta campaign earlier that year in May. His forces scored a number of victories throughout the summer, but could not decisively defeat Confederate forces. By August, Northern morale was so low that the Republican National Committee deemed Lincoln unelectable. The Democratic National Convention, convening in Chicago, had declared the war a failure and planned to ride to victory over Lincoln in the November elections. But Lincoln's commitment to emancipation was unwavering, and Sherman did not disappoint. He understood that Atlanta was, as historian Eric Foner describes it, a key railroad hub and the communications and transportation center for the entire Southeast. Sherman's forces had been marching down from Chattanooga for most of the summer. Finally, they marched to the south of Atlanta to cut the last key rail line. And on this day, Union forces positioned themselves at the Flint River and at the Macon and Western Railroad. Over the next 2 days, they would successfully beat back multiple Confederate assaults, destroying the rail line and forcing Confederate forces to abandon Atlanta. The city was now fully under Union occupation.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The reality is nobody likes going on strike. And it's one of those things that when pushed into it, you don't have a choice. And, as I'm looking at this situation at this hospital, they've been out since March 8th. These nurses are committed. And as she said, look, you don't screw around with nurses. They're some of the most militant people I know. I remember a number of years back, we were marching across the Golden Gate Bridge with a bunch of nurses from National Nurses United, and they were people you didn't want to mess with. They were well organized, and they were willing to stand up for themselves and for their communities. And look, this isn't about money, and this is the thing that's important. This is about taking care of people. This is what happens when you privatize things, when everything you have is privatized. This fetish that the right wing heaped upon us for the last 40 years, that government's bad. The private sector is where everything's at. Today I was the chew toy for the people who follow the Pizzagate guy. And yet not one of them pointed their finger at the private sector. Who's responsible for this? If there are dogs left behind, and I'm sure there probably are, I don't believe the video that they keep circulating, because I don't. Because this is the Pizzagate guy. Not one word about the private sector. Not one word about the profiteers. You never hear them talk about the profiteers. You never talk about the fetishists who have destroyed our healthcare system, because we've got to make the rich richer. We've got to pay out shareholders. We've got to pay huge amounts to CEOs and board members. The fact that St. Vincent Hospital was a community hospital for, well, I think she said it's 120 years old. And it's owned by a company in Dallas who owns like 60 other hospitals. Explain to me how you're going to get decent care out of that. You're not. You got a bean counter who wants to know how to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams. Because it's all about the profit. It's not about people. It never is. The only time people are part of the equation is when you can get them all ginned up, when you get them all wadded up in the panties to where they say irrational, stupid things, which the Pizzagate guy's followers are doing all day today. Because the right can't exist without irrational thought. The right can't exist without people who stop thinking and are just outraged, who are just angry. And look, the thing is I understand the anger. I do. For some people, I get the anger. Now, understand, most of the comments and most of the retweets and the stuff that comes on Twitter, that's manufactured. That's a game. That's just political theater. But there are a handful of minions who don't know it's a game, that they believe they've found their calling. Their cult is there. They've found a purpose. And they believe, some of them truly believe, that they are defending some illusionary vision of freedom or democracy or liberty, all while being just useful tools for the fascists who want to continue to privatize every aspect of our lives. These people who are going to be going to board meetings to overthrow the board, these people don't want public education. These people want power and control. And they want to indoctrinate our kids because you hear it in their rhetoric. The left wants to indoctrinate our kids. What I've found about the right is the second they say something pointed at the quote unquote left, it's what they're already doing. Because it's kind of like the Trump thing. Trump had diarrhea of the mouth. Something would go in his ear and he couldn't wait to spew it out. He couldn't wait for it to just out. And it's what he would do. And of course he would change it and make it crazier. But this is what they do. Because, hey, what I'm doing, I got to let you know I'm doing it. I got to let you know I'm breaking norms. I'm tearing down institutions. I'm destroying lives. Because this really truly is for the people who are in the control position, not the idiots who are the keyboard cowboys in the basement going, oh, I'm going to get him. I'm going to make him feel bad. Understand, I never get butthurt. I never get sad. Make all the comments you want. Never. But understand, you're simply tearing this country apart by tearing all of us apart. Because if we can't agree on big things, like the need to rebuild our infrastructure, the need to invest in the future for health care, for education, for retirement security for our seniors, taking care of our veterans, where we're going to fight over contractors who left some dogs behind? Is it horrible? Yeah, it's horrible that these contractors left those dogs behind. It is horrible. But it wasn't Joe Biden. Understand, the point is tear Biden down. And why do they want to tear Biden down? So that we don't get the infrastructure bill. So that we don't get the Voting Rights Act. So that we don't govern. So that we don't invest in the future. Because the status quo benefits the wealth class of this country. They've got their hands deep in our pockets. They've got their noses deep. They got their snouts deep in the trough. They like it just the way it is. And as disasters happen, bridges collapse and things happen, they just make more money. As we start more wars, they send more mercs. They send more mercenaries. They send more materials. Because it's about profit. understand you're being used. It's about the money. It's always about the money. That simple. Let's take a quick break. When I come back, our good friend Greg Palast is going to be here to share some thoughts on Ed Asner's passing and what's going on in Texas with the voting and Georgia with other stuff. Quick break. Right back.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
It is believed that a little hard work is good for the soul. If this is true, then the history of child workers in the United States is a soulful tale. The first child laborers landed in Virginia in the year 1619. These immigrant children found slave working conditions and poverty wages in their new world. As the years passed, little changed. The average child worker toiled 16 to 18 hours per day, 6 days a week in factories and textile mills. Education was a luxury, and many believed a loss on working children. Charles Harding, president of the Merchants Woolen Company, stated, "There is such a thing as too much education for working people sometimes. I have seen cases where young people are spoiled for labor by too much refinement." Labor unions, consumer groups, and parent coalitions all work to shorten hours, ease conditions, and ultimately end exploitive child abuses. Baby strikes in Paterson, New Jersey, and Allentown, Pennsylvania, demanding 11 and 12-hour workdays were fought vehemently by mill and factory owners. The Pennsylvania legislature was the first to consider prohibiting child workers in 1833, and consider is all Pennsylvania did until July of 1903, when Mother Jones led the March of the Mill Children from Philadelphia to Oyster Bay, New York, in an attempt to influence President Theodore Roosevelt. In 1836, Massachusetts was the first state to pass a law restricting the use of children in manufacturing. And 102 years later, the United States Supreme Court ruled the Walsh-Healy Act restricting the use of child labor as constitutional. Also in 1938, Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which put more stringent restrictions on the use of child labor. While hard work teaches discipline, self-reliance, and responsibility, the exploitive nature of our past must remind us that what we have today, we mustn't take for granted, for the days of tomorrow are doomed to repeat if we ignore those lessons hard learned. This Rick Smith Show Labor History Moment was made possible by a grant from the Labor Education Center at IUP. For more information, visit www.thericksmithshow.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So sad news yesterday. Ed Asner passed. Ed Asner was 91 years old. And great guy. We had the opportunity during our labor history tour to meet him. I got to do a short interview with him. The kids sat on his lap. We took pictures. Great guy. He was in, I think it was Kansas City is where we were. And he was doing a one-man show on FDR, and just a really good, solid, decent human being, and really a strong union guy. Sad his passing. He had 91 good years. But here to share some thoughts on his passing and what he meant. I've asked Greg Palast to come talk with us. Greg is an investigative journalist, author of numerous books. Too many for me to name off. But if you go to his website, gregpalast.com, they are all there. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Glad to be with you again.
So I saw that Ed Asner had done some readings of your book, and I go I wanted to get some thoughts.
Yeah, well, not only did he do some readings of my book, but he also one of my books was The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and he read the chapter about my investigation of Walmart called "What Price a Storegasm," and as usual, he was insanely brilliant. I had all these great actors doing parts like Alec Baldwin and others, but I hope they're not jealous. But Ed blew him off the stage. The other is he was also a cameo. He played Santa Claus in my film The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, explaining how Wall Street works. It's just brilliant, and he was also a billionaire. you know, he was just funny as could be. And I was telling his stories. Some people don't like it very much, but we're shooting the film and he has to play. And I was afraid to tell him. I showed up and I was afraid to tell him, listen, you're going to have to put on a Santa outfit and a goofy beard. And he was game. He said, fine, no problem. And he's, you know, one take wonder. He did it brilliantly. And then, but, you know, he was in his 80s. And of course, with his prostate, he had to take a bathroom break, but where he's all wired up and it's difficult and he didn't want to stop the production. So he said, the heck with it and just let it rip, then took off his soaking pants and then shot the scenes in his underpants. And it was hilarious. Santa Claus in underpants and this billionaire in a top hat and tuxedo coat, but with his in his underpants. It was just wonderful. But, you know, he did it, by the way. He worked on these projects, by the way, with my film, my books, etc., without pay. And there was a reason. He believed that I had something to tell people that ought to be told. And in particular, you brought up that he's a union guy. And I want to tell you, Ed was a steel worker. And the only reason he's an actor is he got laid off at the steel mills. He was happy to have a good union job in Chicago area. He was from Kansas City, by the way. And, you know, good union guy and a guy of great feeling. And one story that's really, really important to tell is, you know, he was known and all the obits, you know, basically say Lou Grant. For those who remember the Lou Grant, the Mary Tyler Moore Show, you know, the irascible guy, that was really him. He really played it with heart. And here's the thing. It was the #1 show in America. And not only that, as my Swiss in-laws tell me, it was the #1 show in Switzerland and throughout the world. It was the top show on this planet. They were all, oh my God, you know, Lou Grant. But it was Reagan was president. It was 1986, and Mary Knoll nuns had been murdered. About 4 of them had been shot in the head, and we saw these horrible photos of these executed nuns by right-wing death squads in Salvador, backed by Ronnie Reagan as part of his, you know, Stop the Commies operation, supposedly the Mary Knoll nuns. So Ed, who wasn't really that political at the time, he had strong feelings, but he hadn't involved in politics. He agreed to go to a press conference and come out against, believe it or not, against killing nuns. How about that? Now you'd think that's not too controversial.
No.
I mean, I don't kill nuns. I don't think you do, Rick. So he's against nun killing, but the heads of the Screen Actors Guild and Ronnie Reagan and his crew absolutely went after Ed, literally saying he was a danger to the nation. And the sponsors just all canceled, you know, the sponsors began canceling their sponsorships, but he still was the biggest. So he's going to get sponsors, but the network canceled him. The network canceled him for his political beliefs, and they canceled the #1 show in America because he came out publicly against killing nuns in El Salvador. But he, rather than kiss the network's ass, he said, take your show and shove it. He was blacklisted again for a while because of that, but then came back with a roar, and, you know him from Up and other things.
Yeah, that's how my kids know him. It's the guy from Up. Yeah.
Yeah. Great voice. What a voice. That's why he's the best voice actor in America. And I was just thrilled to have him lend his voice and his Santa Claus to my films.
No, he will most certainly be missed, and I was saddened because he was so gracious with my kids, and he was so good with his time to give us, you know, some time to talk about unions and workers and his experience, because he went through that. He was a steel worker and that he played football there at the high school that we had seen him at. You know, it was one of those memorable things that my kids won't forget, and I remember him just being a true salt of the earth guy, and I wanted to pay him a little tribute there.
And also, what's great is that he took over the Screen Actors Guild, which had been Ronnie Reagan's operation. So the Progressive did take the guild for a while. They've lost power since, but I got to tell you, that was, you know, kind of a democratic socialism was his strong belief, because he said, that's, you know, I'm a union man, and he stayed a union man his whole life. That's really defined him.
Yep. No, He was a good guy, and rest in peace. He will be missed. I want to get your thoughts about what's going on down in Texas. Evidently, the Texas legislature rammed through their voter theft bill. It's going to go to Abbott's desk if it hasn't already to be signed. I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, look, obviously the Republicans are afraid of voters. You know, they're basically taking the position, if we let people vote, we lose. That's exactly how it is. I mean, of course, the canard of voter fraud, and it's very dangerous stuff. It's simple things like they don't want to have drive-in voting. If you've been to Texas, people, live in their cars. No, okay, that's no good. You have to have an excuse from your mommy and your doctor and your juju man to get an absentee ballot. So, you have to stand in line with the maskless COVID morons in Texas to vote then. They're just dumb tricks. They just don't want people to vote. And they're also, of course, spending a lot of time. One thing that wasn't noticed, and it's not even in the bill, so it's dangerous, it really slipped through, is that Texas has joined a program called ERIC. Now, what does ERIC do? ERIC is a program that identifies people to remove from the voter rolls. Now, why do you remove people from the voter rolls? Well, because supposedly they left Texas. But I did an analysis of this list. It's called the ERIC list. I did an analysis for Black Voters Matter with the top experts in the country. I mean, I got in the, who knows where you live? Amazon knows where you live.
Yeah. Right
now. eBay knows where you live. So I literally got the guys from Amazon and eBay to check their claims that these people have left Texas. And they said, a third of this list is baloney. These people are right there. We deliver stuff to these people. And then I did something simple. I called them up. I met with people and they're still there. So Texas is literally removing a couple 100,000. That's not small. A couple 100,000 people from the voter rolls on the grounds that they moved. They're still there, and they're going to end up not getting their ballots or, showing up and being bounced from the polls. And, not surprisingly, Rick, it's people with names in Texas like Hernandez and Johnson, Black, basically voters of color, and the color's blue. They know what they're doing.
No, they absolutely know what they're doing. I mean, it's just like, the kind of rage that we're seeing at these school board meetings. The right knows what they're doing. They know which buttons to push. They know which people to suppress. They've got the game plan down. Because look, they've got a slew of think tanks that they pay the best and the brightest huge sums of money to devise horrible schemes to usurp democracy. There's nothing new here. I mean, you've been reporting on this for now decades.
Yes, and that with Ed Asner's help as Santa, but and behind it, by the way, Ed played a billionaire in The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, which you can, by the way, download free in Ed's honor today at gregpalast.com or this week, and because we're making a point, as you said, this ain't cheap. Stealing votes ain't cheap business. You need billionaires behind it, and the billionaires behind this operation, for example, are the Bradley family of Milwaukee. Now, you should, as a union man, they should be in your pantheon of people to pee on, because not write a peon for, but they owned the Allen Bradley manufacturing plants in Milwaukee, which were the biggest employers in the city, union jobs. They sold off the company, sent all of the jobs, all those Allen Bradley manufacturing union jobs went to China. They're gone. And they used the billions that they made. They literally sliced off $2 billion to support right-wing causes, in particular, vote suppression. So you can't remove the union busting from the vote suppression. They go together because here's the rule. As I say in the film with Ed, you can't take away someone's job and not take away their right to vote, to complain about losing their job.
Exactly.
And that's where the billionaires come in. So I'm glad you brought up the money, because that's what we got to do, follow the money.
Because it's always the money. I mean, it's not just Bradley. I mean, I look at that Diane Hendricks, the woman who owns the ABC construction company, who famously on video, almost orgasmic, asking Scott Walker, when do we get right to work? And she was all orgasmic over the fact that she was going to be able to deny her workers the ability to the right to join and form unions so she could cheat them out of wages, benefits, make horrible working conditions so she could get richer.
Yeah, and we had a brilliant jokester call Scott Walker pretending to be David Koch, and he practically had Scott Walker down on his hands and knees barking. And, so Koch is, of course, infamous supporter of so-called right to work, basically, removing your First Amendment to the Constitution right to free association and join that union. And, so it's union busting, pure and simple. It's a profit center. So politicians are a profit center to these guys. And that's the problem. When you're supporting progressives, you're not getting anything. You're not getting like a tax break. You're not getting a contract. You're not getting anything in return. But the right-wing guys, they're not supporting candidates. They're investing, and they're getting a massive rate of return.
Yep.
A massive rate of return. And that's the problem. They have turned politics into a profit center, and we're picking up the bill.
No, my grandfather always used to say, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they understand return on investment. Because they wouldn't be spending that money if it wasn't coming back in multiples, and it is. I mean, a couple of $100,000 in lobbying, they get billions in tax breaks. It's a good investment if you can get it, I guess. But the sad reality is the rest of us end up getting screwed. And what we end up with is the scenario where we're at now, where the working class of this country is pitted against each other, and the rage machine keeps feeding this anger. So we never actually solve the problems that are making us really angry while we're getting screwed consistently year after year after year. It's really a masterful scheme they've devised.
Well, it's brilliant. Like, look at, like Leslie Moonves, who was head of CBS, said, look, you may complain about Donald Trump, but for CBS, he's money, he's ratings. So it was a profit center for them to basically give a platform to hatred, to give a platform to this crazy, misguided anger, and deflect from the real, the real guys that are taking the money out of your pocket and blame it on Mexicans and union guys and whatever. And that's exactly what's happened. And so again, I'm glad you're bringing it back to the money, because the money is the game. It's not just, these guys are trying to, guys in Texas are trying to stop voters from voting. They are trying to stop people from getting in the way of their owners, of their landlords, the people that own their souls.
Yep. And the thing is, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the school board meetings that are going on, and the new breed of insurrectionists, because I'm expecting, a January 6th every couple of days now, as these nitwits start going to these school board meetings. And I don't know if you saw today in Georgia, a bunch of these anti-mask idiots shut down a vaccination site. And I'm going, this is all planned, organized, and funded by our billionaire class to continue to cause chaos and division, so that, again, the old Jay Gould quote, I can easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. Here it is in action over nothing but a piece of cloth that someone wears over their face.
Well, I say we do the Ed Asner response. If you're not going to wear a mask, I'm not going to wear pants. It's real simple. I mean, you can't go, how dare this restaurant make me wear pants when I walk in? What do you mean I can't serve on a jury with no pants on? So like, I haven't heard any of these people complain about the pants requirement, but I have no freedom. What? You want me to stop at a red light? How dare you? It's a good thing that CDC isn't in charge of that. They'd just make stopping at red lights kind of a strong recommendation. Stop at red lights. But that's another question. We still have to get over that fear of courage, even at the top levels. So we have to fight back. By the way, how about suing some of these mask holes if you get COVID? If some jerk slams into my car in a parking lot because he's like an idiot and not looking, I can sue him. What about if he kills my grandma because he's not wearing a mask or getting vaccinated and he works in a nursing home? Come on, guys.
Yep.
It's about time we strike back. How about that? But I like the Ed rule. No mask, No pants.
All right, I'm not going to go there with you, but if you want to be, I'm going to be. I'll be happy to stand there and support with you.
From the waist
But I hope they take their deworming drugs and drink the Clorox and all of that. We could do with fewer of them. But Greg, as always, I appreciate the work that you guys do, and always great talking with you and having you on the show. Thanks so much.
See you at gregpalast.com. Bye.
There you go. Good stuff. Greg Palast, gregpalast.com. The best democracy money can buy is the best book I've ever read. I highly suggest it. No, there's a bunch of other ones, Armed Madhouse and the Billionaire Bandits and all of those. Go to gregpalast.com, pick them up. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day the Battle of Blair Mountain raged in Logan County, West Virginia. Members of the United Mine Workers of America were attempting to organize the minefields in the southern part of the state. The efforts to bring workers to union was met with violent resistance. The miners armed themselves and marched south. As many as 10,000 miners joined the march. They met armed company men at Blair Mountain. In the battle that ensued, 1 million rounds were fired. The mine owners even hired private planes to drop bombs on Union miners. The U.S. Army intervened and the battle ended. Despite not being successful in their march, the bloody battle brought national attention to the violence in the coal fields. But that was not the last battle for Blair Mountain. In 2011, there was a proposal to bring mountaintop removal mining to Blair Mountain. This type of mining blasts off large chunks of a mountain surface to get at the coal seams below. Protesters stood against the proposal. They argued it would be environmentally devastating to the area. They also argued that it would blast away one of the most important sites of labor history in the nation. Some coal miners took exception to the protests. In a CNN documentary on the conflict, one union miner said, quote, "Mountaintop removal is what built this house, sends that little girl to school, provides insurance for my wife." But another miner joined in the protest against removal. He told CNN that miners had been, quote, "brainwashed to think, oh, I can't have a job unless it's a mountaintop removal job." In 2014, the state prohibited surface mining at Blair Mountain. For now, but that is subject to change. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I always find Greg Palast to be hysterical. Mask holes. Maskholio. Oh, jeez. You know, I just... We're in interesting times. We really, really are in interesting times. Anyway, the U.S. Forest Service, they have closed every national forest in California because, well, wildfires. Bunches of them. Last number I saw was like 107. And, you know, I got into a whole bunch of trouble on the Twitter sphere because I had the audacity to say the only reason that one of the fires, you know, came out and got more attention than all of the other ones was because it was going towards where rich people lived. Because, well, we can't talk about the rich people. And I think, look, at some point, I think Rich Ojeda is right. We got to eat at least one of them. And then maybe things will change. Although I doubt it. I look at some of the comments that people are coming up with about this feigned outrage of these couple of dogs that someone took a video of that nobody knows what this video is, but they've got a narrative and they're going to hold on to it. Just like, you know, because remember, this is the Pizzagate guy. This video is coming from the guy who was behind Pizzagate. Not to be trusted. But the faithful, and they are the faithful, because if you go through and you read some of their profiles, not the ones that are actual people, not the bots, and not the ones that were created just yeah, me too, yeah. The guy who started the account back in 2011 has tweeted twice, and once is now. Because they created a bunch of these fake accounts just for this purpose. This is not new. But the people who are there, who are actual people, they're the ones who are they're the follower crowd. And they're going to follow these charlatans and these grifters. They're like televangelists. They're like political televangelists. They're spreading the ideology. They're spreading the rhetoric and the propaganda. Or as George W. Bush said, catapulting the propaganda. Because it's how you keep people stupid. If you can demonize the other side, he hates dogs. He hates dogs. That's the best they can come up with. You hate America and you hate dogs. And mom and apple pie and baseball. I happen to really like baseball. But this is where we're at. And this is what crazy right-wing media has gotten us. This is what it's putting us in this spot, to where we talk about how much we believe in democracy, how much, and I hear right-wing people tell me this all the time. My Republican friends are, no, I believe in democracy. We just have to do it my way. Which means, multiple barriers in front of people to vote. I see no reason why we can't have same-day registration. I see no reason why we can't have mail-in voting. When I voted in this last election, only the second time in my life I've voted early. One time I knew I was going to be away for work for a couple of days, and I was going to be out of the state. I went to the county elections office, said, hey, I'm going to be out. Had to sign this affidavit, go through this whole thing. I got the ballot, I filled it out, and I turned it in. Wasn't too bad. Wasn't overly onerous. I was okay with it. This last time, I simply went to a website, said, yep, this is me. Send me a ballot. They sent a ballot to my house. There it was. I filled it out. I put it back in the secret carrier envelope. I signed it, put it in the travel envelope, and I dropped it in at the box at the elections office under the guard of a deputy sheriff. A couple days later, they sent me an email, said, hey, Rick, we got your ballot. We're eventually going to count. A couple of days after the election, they finally got around to mine. They said, hey, we counted your ballot. Got an email saying, hey, all good, man. I'm confused at how hard and how difficult that is and why anyone would oppose it. Oh, that's right, because the former guy lost. And the former guy did lose, right? Even Paul Ryan came out today and said, yeah, Trump lost. Biden won, Trump lost. How hard is that? For the demented, for the deranged, for the followers of Pizzagate or PubeSack or whatever his name is, that's a reality that they just can't fathom. For this domestic terrorist out in the eastern part of Pennsylvania, running for county commissioner or county executive, democracy isn't something he wants. He wants to overthrow our democratic process. He wants to overthrow the rule of law and install people that think like he does, because he can't win at a ballot box. These people cannot win fair elections, and they know it. They know the rest of the country isn't as crazy as they are. They know their numbers are dwindling, and the more dumb stuff they do, the more people wake up and go, not on board with that. And the more crazy people you got going, hey, we're going to throw the school board out and install our people, the more I hope the Republican Party does what I've been asking them to do for a very long time. Take your party back somewhere close to sane. That's all. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.